Thank
Senator
you.
Grassley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Breuer, yesterday you made a public statement saying that ATF and U.S. Attorney's Office officials, quote unquote, repeatedly assured officials in the criminal division and the leadership of the Department of Justice the allegations about walking guns in Fast and Furious were not true. Please be more specific. Who exactly at ATF said that the gun walking allegations were untrue, and who exactly at the U.S. Attorney's Office said the allegations were untrue?
Senator Grassley, as I said yesterday, of course, it was my office that ultimately prosecuted the wide receiver case, and I want to be very clear to you, Senator, that when I learned of this in April of 2010, and I learned about it, and we decided to prosecute this case from 2006 and 2007, I regret that at that point that knowing now, I wish that at that time that I had said clearly to the Deputy Attorney General and the Attorney General that in this case, wide receiver, we had determined that in 2006 and 2007 guns had walked. I did not do that, and I regret not doing that.
Thank you for that statement. Now, who told you at ATF and the Attorney General's office that these allegations were untrue?
Well, Mr. Senator, at the time, as I recall, we first spoke to the ATF back in April of 2010. My front office did, and based on what I understood, we had an understanding from the ATF that this practice of 2006 and 2007, that the ATF understood the seriousness of that.
What's that individual's name?
Well, there's clearly, as far as I know, Senator Grassley at the time, Mr. Hoover, who was the deputy, was one of the people who would have been involved in that discussion. Of course, I wasn't there for it, so I can only tell you my understanding. And then, of course...
That's all I want is your understanding of it.
That's my understanding, Senator. And then, of course, Senator, in early this year, when this matter came to life and the ATF agents made the claims that they did, I recall that both the leadership of ATF and the leadership of the United States Attorney's offices in Arizona, those, of course, who were closest and were handling the matter, were adamant about the fact that this was not, in fact, a condoned practice.
So
and I'm sure you recall that as well.
The word leadership applies then to the people that were head of the U.S. Attorney's Office and head at ATF. Even though you didn't give me their names, that's who you're talking about, right?
That's exactly right, as I recall.
Let me go on then.
Yes, Senator.
On February the 4th, 2011, the department sent me a letter also assuring me that allegations of gun walking were untrue. It reads, quote, ATF makes every effort to interdict weapons that have been purchased illegally and prevent their transportation to Mexico, end of quote. That statement is absolutely false, and you admitted as much last night that you knew by April 2010 that ATF walked guns in Operation Wide Receiver. That's correct, yes?
Yes, Senator.
Okay. That's all I need to know, if that's correct. Did you review that letter before it was sent to me?
So, Senator, again, I just want to be clear that, as I told you a moment ago, I regret that in April of 2010 that I did not draw the connection between wide receiver and Fast and Furious. And moreover, I regret that even in earlier this year that I didn't draw that connection. In direct answer to your question, Senator, I cannot say for sure whether I saw a draft of the letter that was sent to you. What I can tell you, Senator, is at that time I was in Mexico dealing with the very real issues that we're also committed to. But I also regret, as I've said, that I didn't draw that connection earlier.
After learning of gun walking and wide receiver, did you ever inform the Attorney General Holder or Deputy Attorney General about it, and if so, when, and if not, why not?
Senator, I can't be more clear. I've said to you, and I will continue to, I regret the fact that in April of 2010 I did not. At the time, I thought that dealing with the leadership of ATF was sufficient and reasonable, and frankly, given the amount of work I do at the time, I thought that that was the appropriate way of dealing with it. But I cannot be more clear that knowing now, if I had known then what I know now, I, of course, would have told the Deputy and the Attorney General.
Did you ever tell anybody else in the Justice Department leadership the same thing, and if so, who and when?
As Senator, I thought we had dealt with it by talking to the ATF leadership.
Okay. How many guns were walked in wide receiver?
Well, Senator, I can probably try to look at that. Of course, that was in 2006 and 2007. And just to be clear, if I may, Senator, that was a case that had been abandoned and languished. It was my division that decided to take a case where guns had been permitted to go to Mexico years earlier and at least make sure that the criminals who were responsible for purchasing those guns were held to account. As a result of that, Senator, we prosecuted 11 different people. I think, to answer your question, in total, probably about, if my math is good, probably about 350 or so. But, Senator, I'll have to double-check that number.
Then I think you're very close, so you don't have to check that number. According to my information, just 5 straw buyers, and I'll refer to the chart here, and then I'll quit and let you go on to another member, and I'll do some more on a second round. According to my information, just 5 of the straw buyers in Fast and Furious were allowed to buy nearly 1,000 weapons. When did you first know that guns were walked in Fast and Furious?
Senator, I found out first when the public disclosure was made by the ATF agents early this year. When they started making those public statements, of course, at that point, as you know, both the leadership of ATF and the leadership of the U.S. Attorney's offices adamantly said that those allegations were wrong. But as those allegations became clear, that's when I first learned that guns that ATF had both the ability to interdict and the legal authority to interdict, that they failed to do so. And that's when I first learned that, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Breuer.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Breuer, I think this will be my last round of questioning. Were you aware at the time that Deputy Attorney General Gary Grindler was briefed on Operation Fast and Furious in March of 2010?
Senator, I don't believe that I was briefed on Operation Fast and Furious, and Senator, I do not believe that I was aware of that briefing.
Okay. In December 2009, Director Melson asked you to assign a prosecutor to the case from headquarters, and in March 2010, a prosecutor from the gang unit was assigned to Fast and Furious. Why did the number 2 official in the Justice Department get a briefing around the same time headquarters assigned a prosecutor to Fast and Furious?
Senator, I can't answer that. What I can say to you is from the very beginning of my tenure as the Assistant Attorney General, I became very committed to doing everything we could to fighting the drug cartels and to doing what we can to stop what they are doing. It was in that vein that I offered the Southwest borders whatever help we in the criminal division could bring. And that's how the very issues you're raising came about. But I cannot tell you anything about the briefing because I simply did not participate in it.
Okay. You said that when you first learned about gun walking in wide receiver, you instructed one of your deputies to schedule a meeting with ATF acting director to, quote, bring these issues to their attention, end of quote. When you first learned about gun walking in Fast and Furious, did you do the same thing? And if not, why not?
I did not, Senator, and that's what I regret.
Okay. Was the deputy who you assigned to meet with ATF, Jason Weinstein, also responsible for authorizing any of the applications to the court for wiretaps in Fast and Furious?
Senator, the answer is he and other deputies in my office, including the longest-serving deputy in the United States' history, who has served for almost 60 years, did. If I may, Senator, for a moment, I'd like to explain what that role is, if you'd permit me. The Congress made clear in law that wiretaps on telephones are an extraordinarily intrusive technique. They're a technique that I support fully and that I think are essential in fighting organized crime and transnational organized crime. And they're why, Senator, in my 2.5 years, I've over tripled the number of reviewers who do it. But as Congress made clear, the role of the reviewers and the role of the deputy in reviewing Title III applications is only one. It is to ensure that there is legal sufficiency to make an application to go up on a wire and legal sufficiency to petition a federal judge somewhere in the United States that we believe it is a credible request. But we cannot, those now 22 lawyers that I have who review this in Washington, and it used to only be 7, cannot and should not replace their judgment, nor can they, with the thousands of prosecutors and agents all over the country. Theirs is a legal analysis. Is there a sufficient basis to make this request? We must and have to rely on the prosecutors and their supervisors and the agents and their supervisors all over the country to determine that the tactics that are used are appropriate.
Thank you for that explanation. You said in your statement last night that you, quote, did not draw a connection, unquote, between gunwalking and wide receiver and gunwalking Fast and Furious. You also said that you regret your failure to, quote, alert others within the department leadership, end of quote, of similarities. What finally made the light bulb go on for you in the that the two cases had similar problems?
Senator, thank you for that question. I mean, I hope you know, Senator, that I've tried and my division has tried as comprehensively as we can to deal with the plight of Mexico. I'm proud to say, Senator, that it's my division that is prosecuting the thugs and criminals who killed the 3 U.S. consulate officials in Juarez. It's my division that is responsible for the investigation right now of the murderers of the ICE agent Zapata and the shooting of Avila. And it's my division working with law enforcement that has brought 104 Mexican criminals, cartel leaders and the like, including Benjamin Arellano Felix, to justice this year and to the United States. So every day, whether it's in organized crime or white-collar crime or cybercrime, we're working. There is absolutely no question, Senator, that as I was involved in this exercise, and as all of this has come to light, that I, in thinking about it, realized that I should have, back in April of 2010, drawn that connection. I've expressed that regret first personally to the Attorney General of the United States, and then I determined that I should do it publicly as well.
I have just 3 short questions, Mr. Chairman. When did you finally alert others within the department leadership about the similarities that I just described, and who did you alert?
Senator, I can't anymore recall because, of course, by the time that the connection is drawn with me...
That's okay. How did you first hear about Fast and Furious?
I first heard about the tactics about guns being permitted to go to Mexico when ATF had both the legal authority to interdict them and the ability to interdict them. I first heard of those allegations when the ATF agents went public.
Okay. And then when and how did you first learn about the connection between Fast and Furious and U.S. Border Patrol Agent Brian Terry's murder?
Senator, Border Patrol Agent Brian Terry's murder is an absolute horrible tragedy, as are the tragedies of the other people law enforcement and others who've been killed. The only way I learned about any connection there was when it became public. But of course, as you know, Senator, with respect to many of these tragedies, my division has done everything we can to hold the people liable. When CBP agent Rosas was killed, I worked personally, tirelessly to bring his murderer to the United States. I attended the funeral. I spent time with his family. And that's why we're working tirelessly to hold the murderers of Agent Zapata accountable and the murderers of the consulate officials accountable.
Yeah. Mr. Chairman, I have a request of you. I released a report that I'd like to ask be made a part of the record. It refutes the numbers referenced early that 70% of the guns in Mexico came from the U.S. The answer isn't to clap down on law-abiding citizens or gun dealers. Would you include that in the record?
Without objection, the report will be included in the record.
And thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Breuer.
Thank you, Senator.
For your comments.